I'm over here grieving, man. So you came right on time for me. So what's kind of some things that you're seeing in the professional space, around that subject?
So grief is interesting. It's not one specific set thing. I really don't agree with a categorized model of grief because it's really complex and it's personal. It's very deeply personal. Uh,
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Consider Your Mind podcast. We're back again for a brand new season, and we're kicking it off with a returning guest, joining your host, Eric King, as a returning guest back here for the third time, licensed marriage and family therapist who is a recent graduate. So now he's opening his own practice. We're going to go over all those special things, but please give a very special, warm welcome for returning guest and friend of the show, James Geri.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
an
sure, man.
audience of one. That's what we're doing.
Hey, man, back by popular demand. All right,
Okay.
so people are definitely watching it, and we do appreciate you for joining us once again, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Glad to be
Awesome.
here.
Yeah, man. Glad to have you back. And as always, you join us from the West Coast, right?
Indeed, the best coast. Is
Ooh,
that, I don't
ooh,
know.
a little jab to. It's easy to take shots during these cold months. All right. During, we're recording this in January, right at the end of January, and yes, we're coming fresh off of St. Louis freezing over with ice. So
California's got so many different weather patterns and stuff, but like the one that we deal with now is the atmospheric river storm.
the atmospheric river storm.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. They just dump a river on you in like a couple hours, and you just hope it doesn't flood.
Yep, there you go. Hopes and things that you have to do. In addition to high taxes, beautiful people, you also have atmospheric river storms.
That's right.
Just when you thought the wildfires weren't enough. So, no,
Yeah, they
man, but
take
that
turns.
they take turns. That's awesome, man. But no, man, thanks for joining us. And again, like I mentioned back right in the beginning, man, this is your third time coming back to the program, and we really do appreciate it. That first time we had you here, rest in peace to our man Mino. He introduced you, to us, and so we brought you on the show back when you were still in school, and back when we hadn't really have anything. We really didn't know what to expect. We'd only had one therapist on at the time, and he specialized in hypnotherapy. So you kind of gave us a really good in-depth look into what the kind of the world of it is like, and how somebody would even get into it. We had our first episode was episode 13. Go back, check it out. Going from the military to mental health. Documenting kind of your journey in the military. Surprisingly, that's where you kind of got your first encounter with the intake process for people, and getting interested in people and getting into the mental health field. And then the next episode, 20 episodes later, you came back, and we kind of discussed the topic of trusting yourself again. Learning after you've taken, been scammed maybe, or you kind of let yourself down. How do you learn to trust yourself again? And so we're really glad to have you back. So now that you're now no longer a student, no longer, got to do some homework after this. You got to do real work. And so we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule as you opened up a brand new practice named Blue Jay Therapy. So, hey, man, thank you again for coming. Guess we can just pick it off, right where we left off at, man. Finishing up your program, said you were going to start a practice. And so next time you hit me up, lo and behold, you did what you said you were going to do, man. So how's that been going?
So far so good. Uh, I'm always kind of learning. There's always something new to kind of pick up. I think the last time we talked, I was practicing. I think I was closing in on the hours, like finishing up the hours,
Mm-hmm.
and then I went and took the test, passed the test, and got everything set up, and found a space. And I think a lot of therapists, it takes a little while to get used to the business aspect.
Mm-hmm.
We're all sort of wired to, assist folks, but I think learning how to run a business, I think, is one of the bigger challenges because it requires a bit of a different mindset than the one that you would take, if you were sitting with somebody in the room.
There you go. So again, what necessarily the passion of the things that got you interested in the therapy itself, in order to keep on going and keep those good feels and things that you like to do with therapy in practice, you got to go handle the business though to make it a sustainable, model and things going for you. And so one of the things that is part of having a professional practice is your fancy website, bluejaytherapy.com, BLUEJAY therapy. Come on, people, really. Come on. But no, man, I really, great website. And from what I understand, man, I really do appreciate the fact that you shared with us before this that, people are listening. You are backed by popular and demand. And somebody even found you through this podcast last time you're on here. Got you
Yeah,
to bluejaytherapy.com. How about
yeah, yeah. Got lucky.
Yep. No, no, man, that's awesome. That's awesome. So one of the things that I really like that you put on there right on the beginning of the website kind of tells you what it's all about, man. And what I really appreciated is what you guys said that you guys approach is centered on culturally relevant, relational, and evidence-based practices. You adopt approaches that work with the client, meeting with individual needs whenever they begin their therapeutic work. And so I appreciate that you guys are welcoming. Because one of the things that this platform is all about is taking the intimidation factor, taking the stigma off of it. Sometimes I think one thing that I've encountered actually as I've kind of gotten into this work is people thinking, okay, therapy isn't for me unless I can find somebody who is just like me, who looks like me, comes from my background. And a lot of times people don't even think that it's possible to, get help. They're in such a unique place culturally or whatever it is that they don't believe that there's people out there that can not only just not specialize in them, but can still treat them. So how do you guys like put that outreach out there, that welcoming feel to it?
I do my best. There's a lot of things kind of happening simultaneously. One is sort of acknowledging maybe that sometimes shared experience is what's necessary, but also, a lot of times it's fit. If is it a good fit? If it's a good fit, then shared experience, maybe perhaps isn't as important. And if you can get both, well, then that's pretty good too.
Mhm. No, definitely. Because I believe it says you specialize in people that are making life transitions, going through grief, person who have survived trauma, but also, drawing on your experience as a veteran, veterans, military health, anxiety, depression, things that are, people are really dealing with. So it's a broad array that you're working with, but that's such a common thing. People that are going through life transitions, people that are going through grief, surviving a traumatic experience. That's what all of us. We're all going through something,
Pretty much.
regardless. Yeah, pretty much, man. So no, I like to I really enjoyed kind of going through your website, seeing what that's all about, and it really reflecting, who you are as a person. And one thing that really kind of stuck out to me and is part of the reason that we are here is we started off this show with two, my friend and co-host Mino Pashan. And by the time of this episode, he has passed on, from his health issues. But you were the one, you were introduced to me, through him. And so as we kind of did the pre-production for this, one theme that you said, and you also put it on your website, is the theme of grief, that people are going through and how to deal with that. um, and so, like, if you can kind of touch on that, man, I thought that was kind of a perfect subject matter transition, whatever you want to call it, from the season one with the duo to now, holding down solo, man. I'm over here grieving, man. So you came right on time for me. So, what's kind of some things that you're seeing in the professional space, around that subject?
So grief is interesting. It's not one specific set thing. I really don't agree with a categorized model of grief because it's really complex and it's personal. It's very deeply personal, and it's how we kind of respond to loss. Sometimes it's a person, sometimes maybe I see a lot of pet loss too, and also there's other ones too. There's just sort of pulling one random one, not want to list them all, but like maybe you worked with somebody, and it was a really great experience, and you kind of looked forward to going into work because your coworker was just so great, and then maybe one of you moves on or someone's promoted or then you don't work with them anymore. That's a loss too. Loss, it
Hmm,
takes many forms, and
very.
What? Sorry, go ahead.
I said, no, that's a very interesting perspective. I hadn't thought of it, but you were completely right. If there's a certain coworker that's not there anymore, sometimes it's harder to go to work. You're missing that person. And we associate grief with so serious, a death, as we associate it with, but it really is just a loss, a
Yeah,
loss of relationship.
it manifests in various ways, and it impacts people differently. I mean, I suppose if you worked for, 30 plus years, I imagine you might see some recurring patterns and themes, but, you know, you just don't generalize when it comes to grief. Everybody's experience is a little different.
As serious of a theme, as grief can be, from death, that person literally no longer you have be able to have a relationship with that person anymore. Two is simply somebody that moves on from your company, from your job, whatever role that person played in your life, and especially at work, we spend so much time there. You do develop those relationships, and you mourn those losses. And I don't know, it almost feels silly sometimes to mourn the loss harder for somebody that you're not related to than you would for somebody that you are. But again, life is complex like that. I've learned.
Yeah. I I often think about life as kind of divided into a couple different pieces. I go OIL, oil, got to check your oil. You get your occupational life and your interpersonal life and your leisure life. And
Okay.
some people, in your occupational life, it's a life that can be very much apart from your leisure and your interpersonal. Although there is some overlap with the interpersonal life. You success
Hmm.
with occupational life tends to be synonymous with
Yeah.
interpersonal skills as well.
No, absolutely, man. Because your job can really mess up your attitude. I'll tell you that much. You know, and one of the biggest things as well, we're talking about losing coworkers. Um, is your managers and your supervisors. They're such a big part of your attitude and how you feel about your job. And for when those people go away, your good manager goes away, they hire somebody else new that messes up the man. It has a serious impact on us emotionally. And it's actually something recently I was at a kind of a church group function, and people are kind of going around talking about what's going on with them, and so many people were talking about work. So many people were talking about the stress, of the job. These are good, godly people, they're not in the streets, but quote is deadlines, certain management changeovers. There's just the stress, and again, the anticipated stress now. Now
Yeah,
you're dreading going to work.
yeah,
That's a whole
absolutely.
nother level.
I mean, it's interesting too. You talk about switching managers or bosses or whatever, or maybe you
Mm.
become the manager or
Which is why people want to become their own boss, because they're so sick of working with bad bosses.
yeah. It's interesting. I read people don't tend to leave jobs; they leave bad management. You know, uh, you
Message.
also you bring in like you get like a new management team or a new management
Hmm.
strategy too, and you can even have the same boss, but if they now have sort of a different set of constraints or a different mission, then you might have to grieve the way it was, the way that it used to be with your boss, but not necessarily your relationship directly with the boss, but your relationship with your company's direction,
Hmm.
and then that's manifesting through the through the manager. And that can be hard too.
Hmm. And again, everything is funny but the money. So it's different where you're young, kids get to decide who you want to hang out with and whatever. You just get mad at people. Now all of a sudden, people are affecting your paycheck, your ability to provide for your family. Your stress level. That's a whole nother burden. And as one of the episodes, as I revamped the show, I did is on adulting, and talking about like that word is this whole other adulting. As soon as it's adulting is a scam. It's the worst people think, because it's a real thing. As we get older, our relationships to things become more complex. We become more intertwined. We start to get into business with one another. They're starting off as a joint venture, business venture with a buddy, and things going, life changing and happening, and how we handle that as adults with responsibilities. That's when people like you. That's when we come running down, beating down James Geri's door. Please, sir,
I,
walk me
I
off the ledge.
I see that sometimes. It's people that had the best of intentions in starting a business with someone that they're close to, and perhaps they had a long-term developed relationship with this person, or as a friend, and then the realities of running a business set in, and sometimes feelings get hurt and toes get stepped on, and
Hmm.
we sometimes you have to kind of grieve, you know, a relationship can completely change with somebody that we were very close with, and we can grow not to trust them, or you can grow lots of different ways, but business does sometimes change relationships with people that you're close to.
Hmm. Definitely, definitely. Again, everything is funny, but the money. But what I remember an episode that we did in the first season, it was called, dealing with loss. And one thing that I talked about in my modicum of wisdom that I had developed by researching some this mental health platform, uh, that again, dealing with the loss of again ideas, dreams, goals, ways that you thought you were going to be. I'm doing an episode now on uh, cha- uh, adjusting expectations, adjusting expectations, growing. And, because I realized as we grow, the things that we needed at the time and we're disappointed about that we didn't have, a lot of the times we can spend so much time trying to regain those things, but we don't take time to stop and think, hey, is that even really what I need now? Relationships with people that we've had, we're looking for that, what they didn't give us as a child. Well, hey man, now that I'm an adult, actually I don't need what you gave me as a child, but there's some new adult thing. I got a whole new set of adult things you can help with, you know. So that was one of the more the revelations that I got in my time researching this. So dealing with loss can also give you an opportunity to change your relationship to things, to do, look at things in a different light. Is that something that you've seen, with people, even though they've experienced a great loss? Does it open up avenues, for other things?
Yeah. Oftentimes I think we uncover some of our greatest skills in times of some of our lowest points. And
Mm,
you know,
nice.
one thing I always kind of liked about, I'm kind of a sucker for some of the comic book stuff. I was a big fan of X-Men when I was growing up, and
Oh, that was the best show, man. That was literally
uh,
the best cartoon of.
shout out to whoever wrote that opening theme. I mean, it was pretty amazing.
You can hear it.
I still hear it.
Yes.
But they do a good job of portraying scenarios in which people are placed in just incredibly stressful situations, and they were pretty, I guess they were pretty relatable, with a few exceptions. But like in general, the some of the folks that they kind of focus in on, the one character I remember in particular, what was her name, Jubilee. She's um, turns it,
Hmm. She had these things that came out of her. Yes, the sparkles and stuff. Yeah, yeah.
exactly, but ultimately what it come to find out is she was consistently breaking her CD player. um, Brace yourself, I'm that old.
Hmm.
But she's breaking her CD player, and she's always having to get it, repaired. And the person who's working at the repair place is like, "Geez, you broke it again." And but then later in the show, they show her in some kind of futuristic setting, and you realize like what that actually means, that she never really unlocked it until late, that she actually is sort of a walking EMP, and she could disable technology and disable electronics, which is something that we heavily rely on. And so, you see her sort of evolve and grow from this kind of innocent and curious youth to a more realized adult, and put through stressful situations, and come to find out that she's taken these things that look like one thing early, but ultimately became something incredibly powerful for her late. And I thought that show did such a good job of showing those. And so, in our lives, and here in reality, where we get pressed, and we start learning how to do more with less, and we learn how to stretch a dollar even further and further, and learn how to do more on less sleep. We realize like what we're actually capable of, and it's quite a bit.
Man, no, that's a great way to look at that, and that show is deep because I think they were the original ones to dive in the origin stories. So as you were thinking about, as you were talking about that, okay, their origin story. How did you discover your power? How did you discover? So much of it actually is grief. So
Coming
much
through
of it is
loss, yeah,
loss.
yeah.
Literally, again, I like. I liked Magneto because his name was Eric. Uh, but again, what was his whole story? You know, having his mother, you know, the concentration camps and stuff, going through trauma, massive trauma, you know, bring that, you know, out of him. So, no, that,
That's a great example. It's manipulation as well,
mm-hmm,
and cultural struggle. I mean, it was just he was getting pressed by
mm-hmm,
5 or 6 different things. From
yep,
out of it comes one of the. I think I remember he was like one of the most strongest
mm-hmm.
rated mutants out of all of them. Yeah. So
Absolutely. And actually, sidebar, about to nerd out a little bit. As far as I understand, now again, Stan Lee, the creator of Marvel, God rest his soul, he was, you know, big time guy. He, you know, created all these characters, and he actually did create Professor X and um, Magneto as kind of a Martin Luther King, Malcolm X kind of dichotomy. He
hmm.
actually did kind of purposely do that by any means necessary, or you know, integration. Again, they both have love for their people. They're both trying to, again, you know, the mutant race, you know, they're trying to, you know, progress them. Their methodologies are very different,
Yeah, I
you
wasn't aware
know.
of that, but that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yep, exactly. And you may think it based on the name, but actually he didn't steal the Black Panther name from the party. He was on, they were on different coasts, very similar. He said it almost like he made it like literally a year after they become an organization, but they were on California, on the West Coast, Bay Area. Huh?
Yeah, yeah.
He was already in New York, so he's like, hey, actually, that was just a coincidence. But again, okay, nerd moment over, people. Back to the mental health stuff. But one thing that when we were, you know, kind of getting ready for this episode, and I was, you know, kind of think about, I never thought of anticipatory grief, you know, or anticipating grief, but it made a lot of sense because, you know, when we talked about, again, the origin stories kind of this show, you know, with my you know, great friend of mine going through a physical, you know, health issue that was literally slowly taking him, you know, liver failure, you know, diabetes. These things are, you know, compounding, and so there was always this anticipation, you know, of it. And I didn't really know what to call it. You know, what do you call when somebody tells you they're going into hospice care or that's where they're headed? You know, I had to learn about what that even was. But that's all about literally anticipating or making somebody comfortable on their way to transition, you know, out of this life. And no one prepared you for that. No, like that's not something I'd heard about. I'd heard about dealing with death, but in terms of how to deal with a loved one or something that you know is slowly dying, you know,
Yeah.
that's that must give you a lot of work because none of us are prepared for that.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
don't know. I don't know who can prepare for that in an efficient way or in any kind of way, really. I mean, it's just it kind of starts to happen and you realize you're kind of in it. um, and you know there's a loss that's on the horizon, or maybe it's pretty close. It can affect mental health, it affects physical health. I mean, gosh, the mental health effects, you start to see increases in sort of anxious feelings, and you see symptoms of depression, sadness, and anhedonia, which is jargony, but it's basically, the inability to experience pleasure
yeah.
from things that would normally give you pleasure.
We'll put that across. Now we're visual. We can put that right across, man. You know,
Anhedonia.
yeah.
Um, Helplessness is another one. That's a big one, because
Yeah.
it's coming to terms with something that is going to happen, and sort of fighting against some of our own biases to believe that maybe it might work out, maybe it won't. We'd like to believe that it could. A lot of the media that we might consume involves things that happen with small chances of occurrence, but in the end, you know, these things, they come, and they're very hard to deal with. And it's like the physical stuff you see, like disturbances in immune system. The stress starts to increase and can affect the way that you're healing or make you more susceptible to sickness. Um,
That's
and
very interesting, man. Your body physically, again, doesn't respond as much to healing. I don't think people realize, again, how much our mental health does affect the healing and, you know, processes of our body. One thing, again, learning about the, you know, getting ready for this show is learning about the effects on stress on the body. And stress, literally, the fight or flight mechanism, it's there for a reason. If you're in danger, hey, that now's the time to stop digesting. Now's not growth time. We're not developing nothing. Now it's time to use all your energy to get away so that you can go ahead and have those wonderful things later. Um,
Yeah.
but if you continue to keep yourself in a continual state of stress, well, then, again, you're not processing, you're not growing, you're not digesting. Your body doesn't have time to recover and to heal itself because it's so tense, you know. Again, it's good for, stress isn't a terrible thing. If you don't never get stressed about nothing, man, that may show a lack of passion and a whole nother issue. However, if you continually keep your body wound up in the sprinter's position, you're, raised up, set, and you never get that go to release that, the damage that it has, on you, internally, it's gonna can't help but affect you outwardly.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, another one is sleep. Sleep gets affected, and that's huge. You know, I'm glad that um, folks out there with platforms are starting to really kind of hammer home the importance of sleep. Um, and I
I mean,
heard I
why
heard
you
a
gonna
commercial.
talk about me like this? You gonna talk about me like this on my show because I don't sleep good? Who told you? See these bags?
Yeah, that's I understand. It's yeah. I think given scenarios that we have particular reactivity to, in this case, if we're talking about anticipatory grief, it's I think the most common might be like the loss of a loved one, or somebody with a terminal diagnosis who's sort of in the later stages, and it's hard to sleep. How can you sleep? It's like, how can I sleep when my time with this person is likely going to be limited? And some people it's insomnia, and other people it's waking up a lot, startling awake, and the lack of sleep. And imagine you're experiencing the wrong kind of stress, not you stress, but you're experiencing the hardcore stress, and then now you're not getting enough sleep on top of it, or you're getting disturbed sleep. I mean, talk about an overtaxed immune system. I mean, it's the interconnectivity of this all is it's pretty strong.
Yep. And speaking of adulting, as we get older, this stuff takes a harder toll on you. You don't bounce back like you used to. you
That is
know
true.
that is something that we have to be conscious of. So I'm glad we're using this platform to get encourage that, because as you start to get a little bit older, we start burning the candle at both ends. And again, it's the recovery time. From what I hear, either from like professional athletes, it said it's not that I can't like do it, but doing it back to back, going again, getting hurt, recovering, the recovery just isn't what it used to. Now sprained ankles take, keeping about a month. Back when they were younger, a couple days, I'm back. But that just happens in life, period. I think with a lot of us, we're very resilient. Children are a lot more resilient than we give them credit for, um, and we were children once. But a lot of those unresolved things, though, those traumas, hey man, after a long time, is gonna wear on you, man.
Yeah, that's I always had such a God. It was just like you know uh, players like basketball players in particular, where they're playing, you know, 4 to 5 games in a week. Sometimes as few
82
as
game
three.
season, yeah,
Yeah, and
82 game season, man. That's not a
and
joke.
the NBA, when we were growing up, they weren't taking the scheduled rest. They were out there every single night. I mean,
There was
it
no
was
load management. What you talking about?
load
Greg
management. That's
Popovich.
what it's
Yeah,
called.
Greg
Yeah,
Popovich started load managing with the Spurs with
yeah,
Duncan and them when they were actually old, which made sense. Then it just caught on, man, and forget that.
yeah. It was impressive. But you wonder, like, it does take a toll, and you wonder what's being sacrificed when
Yep.
folks are doing that.
Yep.
When you're with somebody,
Hmm.
and you're caring for somebody who's either in like a palliative care or hospice or something like that. It's you would sacrifice your own. Most people, I think, would just sacrifice their own sense of rest so that they can be available for the person that they love.
Hmm. No, absolutely. Relationships, man. Life is all about relationships. If there's nothing else, I've learned is that. And so, the things that we'll do for those relationships, the things that will motivate us to do. Hey man, it'll motivate you to continue on the podcast and step it up to a different level and make it video and all type of things. I'm
Sure.
telling for a friend. But it's not all bad. Like in grief, it can be a motivating thing. It can be missing somebody. Those tied to things that are tied to strong emotion. I think are important because it's so easy to numb out. It's so easy, again, to pick up a substance or get in a situation where you're again numbed out to your reality or your life because life is tough. The tough stuff is actually sticking in it, feeling the hurt, feeling the loss. You know, um, there's a show that I love, and I don't feel bad for loving it but it's kind of weird. Intervention. You ever watch Intervention? That show?
No, I've never seen Intervention.
Oh man, it's been on for like a long time now. Okay, like over 15 years, and so it's on A&E, but it's about people with addiction. So long before I had any interest in mental health stuff, I was always watching this show. So people with various types of addiction, but there was always a pattern. There was some type of trauma. When they were younger, some issue happened, whether it be a divorce, something they were assaulted in a certain type of way. Something happens, and then enabled in order to not deal with that trauma or not able to process it, they turn to substances, turn to certain activities, certain addictions to go ahead and alleviate that stress. And it was a pattern. Like that was what it was 9 times out of 10. Other times it was genuinely somebody got caught up with something like obviously the opioid epidemic and stuff like
Sure.
that. They got
Yeah.
they got an accident, they got prescribed something, you can get hooked on those. So that's a much more of a predatory thing, you know. Um, but in terms of that pattern of again dealing with a loss, a grief, or if maybe sometimes they were recovering, they were doing good, they were playing around when they were younger, but then that stability, that stable force in their life, their grandmother, their mom, their father, somebody dies, and then they just go over the deep end, you
Yeah.
know.
I got to be careful when I talk about addiction medicine and addiction treatment because it's not an area of specialty for me. But
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
I've observed a lot. The I have a personal experience, I guess,
Okay.
with the prescription opioids. I had an L45 disc injury, back in the day,
Your
and
back, the back injury, back. Okay, yeah,
yeah,
the
the
back. Yeah,
lumbar spine, fourth and fifth disc.
yeah. This happened in the military, or was
Yeah,
this
it was on active duty. Yeah,
okay?
and
Yeah.
so it was like we were going to do surgery sort of at the end of the summer, but you were going to have to do some pain management, and so put me on the OxyContin. And boy, I just remember after like a couple of weeks, I just kind of started feeling zombie-like, and it was kind of a weird feeling. Felt thin, like mentally thin. And after a while, it was like I don't, I don't like the way I feel. Um, and so I think I was kind of fortunate enough to not have some of the aspects that people will struggle with who are susceptible to addiction, and so just kind of just stopped it cold turkey. And when I remember that first weekend was, boy, it was rough. It was just like, I talk about a transition. I was basically just focused on brushing my teeth, drinking water, making sure I was getting some food, and taking it easy, resting. At that time, I wasn't living in the barracks. I had my own apartment. I was kind of it was and I guess the Navy is not really NCO, but like it was a second class, which is basically middle management. And I was able to have an apartment out in town, so I was able to kind of have a space to my own. But a lot of folks are just, they're not experiencing sort of that degree of privilege or just sort of luck. But I just remember like the feeling of kind of being able to pull away from that, on the Monday morning, I was still feeling it, kind of felt just kind of greasy on the inside, but over time it kind of faded. And it just, I know that when you compare to, the damage that some of these opioids have done and are still doing, um, boy, just I think my experience, I got lucky.
Mm-hmm. No, no, definitely. Some people again don't come back from it. It's something that we've talked about on the show because our first episode was, shout out to our boy Stephen Moore, More Awareness Tees. Was his recovery with AA. We had another guy on the show. We did schizophrenia. A friend of the show. Kind of talk about his, some of the addictions that he had. So a lot of these things do go hand in hand. But I'm glad you pointed out the fact is that they're not one and the same. They're not. It's not all just one, big ball in there. However, you're still dealing with people and people with issues and hurts and pains, and a lot of times some of the methods and things that we do with the best of intentions to help alleviate that can end up getting a hold of us, and it can turn into something something pretty bad. So
Yeah, and you start to see the undercarriage of guilt show up, and guilt will play into it in a pretty significant role too, depending on, you know, if there's been damage to self or damage to others. You know, I've seen that.
No, guilt's a huge one. Speaking of grief, the other G one is guilt, because we just talked about losing a person or anything like that. There's that guilt of, oh, I should have been there, more. I should have, and particularly if you're in a time where you're in an addiction, you're not in your right mind, when you're away, um, and I can even imagine those people that experience a loss where they're incarcerated or things like that.
Hmm.
You don't get that chance to, get back the guilt, that what you have that could draw you to, some very dark places, and but I'm not sure. Yeah, it's guilt. I know it's a natural emotion, but is it an akin to grief? Is it akin to, like, because I think it's like a loss, wouldn't it be? You feel guilty about something that you didn't do, that something that you lost, an opportunity.
I think guilt is another one that sort of personalized, and it manifests in a very complex and deeply personal way. I know that guilt would definitely kind of tie into, kind of fuels the bargaining. There's the 5 stage model: denial, anger,
Yep, the five stages of grief, bargaining. Yep,
bargaining,
acceptance.
depression, acceptance. Yeah. So like the bargaining piece is like, if only I had done this, if only I had done that, if
Hmm.
only I had, zigged when I should have zagged, whatever it is. But, and you could, I imagine that the guilt would just, like a volcano, the deeper you might go into, if only I had done this, if only I had done that, and, people, gosh, they punish themselves with it too. It's,
Yep, yeah. Yeah, the punishing yourself with it. And that kind of brings me back to, again, the episode 33 that we did, learning to trust yourself again. And again, that was kind of back in the summer. And for context, for the people that don't know, um, I did that interview with this guy while the mother of my child and my child were in the living room, and I, being the smart person I did, and all the great time management skills that I had forgotten to blow up like the mattress and everything out there and get everything ready for them so they could chill out. So I'm over there, it's like, oh, I'll be right back, and I do a whole interview, and I come back outside there, she's looking at me like, why there wasn't this? I was like, I'm sorry. I'm trying to be professional and juggle everything, but I'm really not doing. And so, I tried to buy a lot of Chick-fil-A to make up for it.
well,
Things that you got to do. And so I felt guilty about, dang it, I'm over here focused on this when I should have been, but how do we learn to move on and learn to forgive ourselves? Because again, what we were talking about was, again, trusting yourself after you've let yourself be scammed, after you've taken done something on maybe your own accord. How do you learn to, again, trust yourself again? And so in a lighthearted way, I was like, dang, how do we get past these pure moments of, hey, I messed up, but how do we
well,
keep it pushing?
in my estimation, you need the facts. FACTS. So the step
Okay,
one, yeah, the F.
okay,
Now,
break it
and I
down,
want
break
to.
it down.
Okay, I will. Someone else may have come up with this, but if they have, I didn't find it. So this is
Okay,
sort of
hey,
a
we ain't
thing that,
plagiarized, we're not biting.
no, I put it together myself.
All right,
The first step, really, I think, is to forgive yourself. Um, you know, it,
forgive yourself.
so much of our work is, recognizing that, we're not superhuman. We're human, and, to err is human. To make errors, to make mistakes, is human. People are making mistakes at everywhere in society, and so, really, let's forgive ourselves. Let's try to be a little less hard on ourselves. Let's see if we can forgive ourselves. Number two, we want to accept our imperfections, and that kind of plays into forgiving ourselves. We have imperfections. We're not perfect. We're the To strive for perfection. Some people, that's everything, and those that do it over longer periods of time, um, are, I tend to hear this is like, yeah, over time you kind of get past the silliness of it, and you realize it's like, well, in my pursuit of perfection, I realize that it's the pursuit itself that's valuable. It's not actually being perfect.
It's the
It's
journey. There you
it's the,
go.
it's the
It's the
journey, yeah.
journey.
So we're forgiving ourselves, we're accepting our imperfections,
Okay.
and we're caring for ourselves. C is caring for ourselves. So, like, one of my favorite things to say, and I'm sure my clients would, I've probably said it to everybody, and I'll say it to everybody in the future too. We got to brush our teeth. You know, we need some of our activities of daily
Somebody
living.
need to hear that. Somebody need to brush their teeth. Just want to point that out.
We got to take care of ourselves.
Take care of yourself.
it's
Absolutely.
important to take care of ourselves. It's like we're trying to drink enough water. We're trying to, make sure that we brush our teeth and, take care of ourselves. Because it's very hard to have compassion for ourselves when we're neglecting ourselves. So,
Very
yeah,
much so. Very much so. I think again, this platform is about again reaching out for help, getting therapy, and that's part of taking care of yourself. One of my main things when I first started this thing was like, hey man, we know we're out of shape. We go to the gym. Talk to the personal trainer. Okay, we know what to do. If we need to learn something, get a skill, we go to the school. We look up the program. What do we need? All of a sudden, with our mental health, we want to get done. We act like there's nothing you can do. There's nobody out there. Yes, there are. There are resources, but you have to care enough about yourself to believe you're worth it. Some
yeah,
people don't believe they're worth, spending the money on. Some people don't believe they're worth, their problems or issues are worth it. So, I love that C of the facts, caring for ourselves. Absolutely.
yeah. Next one is take action. You
Nice.
know, we want to, we don't want to try to do too much too quick. We want to sort of build our successes, and so we take the big things and separate them into smaller things, and let's see if we can knock out some of these smaller things. If I'm looking at, I don't know, like a box of papers that I need to go through, I'm seeing a dragon that I just can't slay. But maybe if I go, you know what I'm going to do this time, I'm going to reach in and grab a handful and close the box and go through them, and then when I'm done going through them, I'm going to walk away. And then I'm going to come back a little bit later on and grab the next handful and just go through those and then walk away. And I'm going to build some successes, some small successes, and pretty soon realize that, I'm actually have the energy to maybe grab two handfuls this time, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to walk away. And before long, that box is done, and you've kind of gone through everything in it. And you can feel accomplished because not only did you accomplish one big thing, but you also accomplished a lot of small things. And that can feel like, an insurmountable height when you're worried about, can I trust myself? Am I going to come back? So we're forgiving ourselves, we're accepting our imperfections, we're caring for ourselves, we're taking action. And you alluded to the S, which is to seek support. Um,
Seek support. Absolutely.
yeah, we got to find people that are in our corner. And, sometimes, you know, sometimes we need some caring, and we're looking for support, either professional or familial. There's people in our family that, maybe that one cousin that you always trusted, that always had your back or was always there for you, or maybe an aunt, or maybe a parent, direct parent. It's everybody has sort of a different connection to a different family member. For some people it's coaches, for some people it's friends. But those things all kind of together will definitely help a person, sort of, you know, work into repair themselves when it comes to do with trusting themselves.
Nice, nice. That's great, man. The facts. So for those of you guys who missed, need the rundown again. The F is forgive yourself. The A, accept our imperfections. See, that's imperfect. There you go. Uh, caring. The C is for caring for ourselves. T is for take action, and the S is for seek support. Man, that is so good. The facts, people. That's all we speak over here. We just speak the facts. You know.
We try.
We try. That's all. We're
Yeah.
we're in pursuit of it. We're not perfect. This is imperfect, and this is our first go around at this on video. So I know there's gonna be imperfections, but I thank you all for listening and enjoying it with us. So now that's our second acronym. Hold on, before we get, you had oil earlier.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, hold on. Let's not. So we're dropping jewels for you guys, people here. All right, take notes.
Yeah. Tasty
So
morsels.
tasty morsels, man, for sure. But one of the things that I kind of wanted to touch on too was okay, so kind of spoke on the business, open up your own practice, making it happen, and again, even a reference or two of the Consider Your Mind podcast that's being brought to you. But what are some things that you're kind of seeing that's like that you see kind of trending, whether it be in your practice, people that kind of what's kind of going on in the therapy world there. Now, again, I know you're on the West Coast with all the rich people up in Silicon Valley who got rich people problems, but no, for real though, what's kind of the the trends that you kind of see now that you're practicing in the field?
So I've got folks with very unique and diverse backgrounds. From 1 hour to the next, very different situation. Um, you know, it's hard to even describe the diversity, which is actually kind of my favorite part. Is
It's a
you know
good
there
thing.
Yeah, some people are, their strategy works for them, and they would say specialize. And
Mhm.
if I had a particular aspect of mental health that I really wanted to specialize in, I suppose I could sort of manicure my practice to move towards that. But much in the way, I don't like to use a medical model in therapy, but um, you know, if you think about sort of medicine, there's specialties, internal medicine, ENT, and um, but there's also the family practice
Yeah, 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 yeah.
doctor that sees everything.
Hmm.
I think I kind of like that aspect of therapy, like a wide range of stuff. And I work with people that are, experiencing trouble in their occupational life, some in their interpersonal, and some in their leisure too. It's true. California's sort of a very diverse state. There's a lot going on. It's a melting pot for sure.
Definitely,
Um,
that's what I've heard about it. It's huge. California's a massive state. We look on the map, and you got everything from the mountains up to the desert. To you got lots of horses there too. Lots of ranches and horses and stuff. So
it's true. And cows, tons of cows, lots of cows.
see, we associate as Midwestern folk. We think they're all up in Wisconsin. Okay, they keep the cows in Wisconsin, and that's where all the milk. Nope, nope, nope.
We've got cows here too.
Got
Yeah,
cows there too, man.
yeah. So there's a lot of different things, a lot of options. There's a lot of different climates. The Bay Area's, if you talk about weather, there's only five similar climates like the Bay Area in the entire world. Yeah, it's an
I
interesting
wouldn't have
place.
known.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do
Like
they
on the
do they do they do they make sure they include that with the when they increase the rent and the taxes? They make sure, hey guys, just so you know, there's only five other places that you can go in this world like this.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I actually do wonder if sometimes they take that into account. That's one of the
Yeah,
reasons
that's
why
a
the
selling.
property
Yeah,
value is a little
I'm
higher.
very sure you learned that from that's a nugget they dropped in there somehow to justify it. But no,
Yeah,
no, but that's good because again, as we said, from the website, it says specialize in people making transitions, working with grief, again, dealing with real life.
yeah,
I know one of the big themes for me last year, again, had to actually go ahead and make a second podcast about it when I talked about dealing with loss. Was I dealt loss of my great grandmother, but then also prior to that, I actually lost a friend of mine, due to suicide. And actually, it was so painful, I kind of blocked it out. I really, one of my ways of dealing with it really was just kind of blocking it out. um, and so when we started kind of delving in, to this mental health space and learning to learning to navigate that out loud is a hard thing to do. Do you find that like some of your practice is just even talking with people so they can eventually just to say out loud what the actual issue is? Because again, you can do a whole I did a whole episode talk about the losses in my life, losses, jobs, losses of career things I thought were going to happen, a family member that was very close to me that died. But actually one of the biggest losses that I feel is damaged, it took me a while just to even say that out loud and to really go over how much it really affected me.
yeah. You think about all the things that might go into preventing us from being able to say it out loud. There's so many. There's shame aspects to it. There's depression aspects. There's anger. Anger's a big one. Anger oftentimes it comes out as anger, but it's something else. That happens a lot. And you know, uh, just actively suppress the hard feelings. They'll come out in other areas. They come out in other ways, and they cause us to maybe be a little bit short with somebody who's trying to help us, and maybe we get quiet and reserved when otherwise we would have been, chatty and talkative. And offering an opportunity in a safe location for people to to see what it sounds like when you say it aloud. And I think part of doing that, and this is sort of a personal philosophy, is I want to try to be companionate. The idea is, we're gonna walk along this path together. I'm not. It's not that I'm teaching. It's that I'm sort of learning with curiosity, compassionate. It's like compassionate curiosity, and that's actually one of
Compassionate
the
curiosity. Yeah, nice.
yeah.
I like that.
It's one of the ways that I work to be with people experiencing grief, and try not to think about it as it's very easy to sort of treat grief like an illness, but it's not. It's not an illness. It's a situation that people are dealing with. Again, it's complex and deeply personal, and have to be consistently aware of my own personal biases, um, and how I'm interacting with people. There's so many different ways that we can deal with grief, and then to think about how different cultures look at grief. Um, and so there's no pulling. There's no. It's not really even treating. It's presence. It's presence to be with, and that it can
Hmm.
be okay to explore these really, really hard situations that sometimes we will even punish ourselves for having some of these feelings. We think, oh, I shouldn't be experiencing this. I should be
Oh yeah,
stronger.
yeah, absolutely. The classic is I knew better. Well, really, did you?
Yeah, or maybe you were doing the best that you could at that time with the information that you had available to you.
Absolutely. I think I've said that to some people before. Like again, we do the best we can at the time with the information you have available. And
Yeah.
again, when you look back, hindsight's always 2020.
Oh yeah.
But if you knew
You
that
hope.
at the time, we wouldn't be there. So again, that forgiveness, the F, forgive yourself first. You gotta forgive yourself for what you don't know. But one thing that I worked on in therapy, and I like how you described it, what a therapist was, because this started with my journey. Getting a therapist. We were actually together for 2 years. Worked with him for 2 years. Just this last fall, he started his own practice. So I lost him to wanting to be his own boss. That whole thing. And so conflict of interest can't just take clients over.
Mm,
But throughout that time, one of the things that we worked on was preventing self-sabotage. you know Preventing self-sabotage, because a lot of times, like you said, it'll come out in different ways. We suppress it, we isolate, we don't reach out for help, and a lot of times we can become self-destructive. We can mess up something good we have going on in our life, just because the cognitive dissonance we have, it doesn't match how we feel on the inside, so we'll mess up that outside to match how we feel on the inside. So a lot of our work was done on that. And bringing up that show I watch a lot, Intervention, there was one thing that the interventionist said, because they were, asking why, uh, this guy, he was on drugs, obviously, his parents, his family, they really wanted to help him. And he was working for the family, actually working for the family. But they said, he started in this nice machine shop, but he started really coming in late, messing up, being high on the job, like messing it up. And so they were saying, you know, man, we want to be back in the family, but he's going to mess it up. Why is he going to mess it up? So, and the interventionist says, uh, self sabotage is more consistent. Failure is consistent. Failure feels consistent, he said. You know, failure feels consistent, and feeling bad is even consistent. It's that feeling good. That's the roller coaster. There's no guarantee of that. You know, and I thought that was pretty deep. That fear of success. I think people have a fear of failure, but what happens when you win? Actually, what happens when you get what you want? Get the responsibility, get the family, get the money, get whatever it is that you thought was going to make you happy, that you thought was going to, and how do you truly handle it? And so, like, I thought that was profound. I never heard it like that. Feeling good isn't doesn't feel consistent enough, but feeling bad does. It's like a degenerate gambler. The world crumbles down on you. You lost everything, but you're still alive. It's a thrill for you.
sure.
So,
Well, I think I might have mentioned even this on one of the earlier podcasts that you've run. There's a famous speech that I think Denzel Washington gave to I think it was a graduating class at a school. To this day, I don't know where he was giving this speech, but it was so amazing. It was so motivating, and powerful.
mhm.
He
Yeah.
talked about, the the sort of the generalizing about fear, and it's like the fear of failure or the fear of success. The fear of failure, what if I can't do it? And the fear of success, what if I can do it and then I can't handle it afterwards? And it's like to self sabotage to prevent myself from being successful, well, then I keep myself on this same track that is predictable and I've gotten used to it. And I've built up an immunity to it almost. Like I know how to navigate it. I know I can just kind of tough it out. And
Yeah, I know how to be a mess up. I know how to, fail. I know how to be what. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and also too, and this isn't everybody, but sometimes it has to do with, um, you know, uh, uh, if I continue down this path, I can still blame it on the circumstances that kind of kept me here. But if I, cross over and try to, move towards something that's different, that I think will lead me to health, and it doesn't work, then I have to blame myself, and that
Hmm.
fear is so great. Yeah, I see some of that sometimes too.
Yeah, I had a buddy of mine, I'm not gonna give it away, but he literally told me about a boss that he had, and he said like they were having some type of meeting, and he said, I can't be the problem. Like I can't accept that. Like the guy literally told that to him, and that stands out to me because I never really heard anybody like just say like I can't, because you have that theory about stuff like NFL owners, team owners can't fire yourself, can't not gonna fire the boss. They can't be, but for it to actually be articulated out loud, like I'm not gonna change, you got to change.
Yeah.
I can't accept that I have the issue. Everybody wants to be the hero in their own story. I've heard it put like that, but some people really don't have the tools necessary to navigate when that doesn't happen. What happens when you're not the hero? What happens when you do mess up? What happens when it is your fault? It's our reaction right there, that it's not just a character thing, but that's also skills that we've developed over time. And if you haven't developed them, all of a sudden, that that shows up in self, can show up in many different ways. I guess what I'm trying to say.
It's interesting when you see NFL franchises that have a long history of um, just never kind of having any sustained success, and you kind of start to go up the managerial ladder up to ownership, and you can kind of see that a lot of the culture stems from some of this trickle down stuff, like managers that
Hmm.
say, oh, I can't be the problem, it can't be me.
It
um,
can't be that.
yeah, yeah. And NFL is so interesting because it's results now. So you get a consistent look at, what a well-run organization looks like. You draft well,
Hmm.
bring in the right people to teach and the right players to do things. And then everything is always seems to be clicking. And you see there's a few franchises I think that did it really well and have continued to do it well, even sometimes without all the Super Bowl success. But like the Steelers is interesting
Hmm.
to me that
Yeah,
when you look at the
consistency.
consistently picking. They've had like what, two coaches in the last 20 or
They've had
30 years.
Yeah, they've had three ever. They had Chuck Noll was their first coach all through the '70s up until the early '90s, I guess, with Bill Cowher. You
Cower,
know,
yeah,
Cowher, and then now
and then
Mike Tomlin. He's
Tomlin,
the longest tenured coach in the NFL now, like
yeah,
three
and
ever.
yeah, that like that speaks to. I think that's and they've had and they're. I think they're tied for the most championships.
Yeah, championships again. It has again. Mike Tomlin himself again have never had a losing season in like 17 years. It's ridiculous. Like things that,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that consistency is hard to find. So
Hmm.
consistency then you realize can also become the enemy of wanting to change. It's like, oh, I have done this thing that I have set out to do, and I know that I'm healthier now. But now, how do I be consistent? How can I be consistent and continually do this? Like, what if it gets boring? Some people, it's like I get nervous when it's easy. I get nervous when it's easy because it shouldn't be this easy. And I realize, no, you're really strong and powerful. Like you're good. Like you're good at this. Like,
It's
and
harder
they're
for
like,
everybody else, sir. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
You have a talent, sir. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, I think it's a mixed bag. And again, it's complex and it's deeply personal. Just
Hmm.
kind of like the definition for grief.
Definitely. And one thing that you did say that was, I thought, the S in facts, which is, seeking support. That's the thing, as we kind of transition to thinking about, how, again, the reason we met, Mino. Um, that was his main thing. We recently were able to put out kind of a clip of, I think his early episode, maybe it was episode 2 or 3, where he's kind of speaking about the importance of seeking help, man, when you're going through something. And that's not the easiest thing to do, particularly as men. We want to be macho, we want to be, and obviously you wouldn't know this, but as men of color, I'm sure you've heard that's not the thing to do. Asian families, African American families, Latino families, we don't talk about the family therapist. You know what I'm saying? Those aren't just common common themes for us. So as we kind of remember him, I think it's important to remember the strength and the courage that it takes to seek help, to admit that you have a problem, to show your weaknesses. Because to your point earlier, you're gonna seek those who are looking out for you, who are supporting you, or friendly. However, that's not everybody. One of the best pieces of advice that my therapist gave me was, not everybody deserves your vulnerability. you know
Yeah,
Not everybody has earned your vulnerability.
sure.
So I think that was something um that I definitely kept with me and in mind, as I kind of balanced that. Mino's had, hey, reach out, reach out, reach out. Okay, but once you actually reached out, those are the people that can kind of give you instructions to, all right, what's the safe space? Where is the safe space? And recognizing that, and you know, and then again having the courage to be the face of it, to be the voice of it, man.
It's so
So
interesting
shout
you
out to
talk
him,
about.
man.
Oh, sorry, I cut you
No,
off.
that's how I just said. Shout out to me. Every time I think about it, man, brave dude, man. Rest in peace. Like,
Indeed. And you think about not everybody deserves your vulnerability, and what are some of the things that might cause us to see a relationship as more than what it actually is. We go through something together, and we're now somehow kind of bonded through this mutual experience or
trauma
trauma.
bonds, right? And that,
Trauma bonds, yeah, yeah.
yes, I've heard
It's
of that.
I see
Okay,
it a
let's
lot.
get into that. Okay, let's get into that trauma bond. Like I said, it's just,
Yeah.
so a word I've heard, and again, when I did a little bit of work with Codependence Anonymous, a little
Mm.
bit when I heard that, but you gotta go in there, trauma bonds.
Yeah, experience a traumatic event, or you know, people that otherwise would not have come together, or on the other side of the spectrum, siblings who endure traumatic experiences, and the
Came from the rough household, survived the, yeah.
sure, or and then there's degrees of that as well. Like a highly violent household environment, or maybe an absentee environment where one sibling is kind of parenting the other two, and it's not always for reasons of malfeasance or something like that, but it's like both parents are working, so there's an expectation that eldest child is responsible.
Yeah, I think that was, again, slightly before our time. I think that's Gen X. They were the latchkey kids, firmly, right?
Oh, that's
They were
my
the Gen X.
generation.
That's Okay. Sorry, I was.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, the latchkey. You made it though. You survived, Jay. I'm proud
Yeah,
of
I did. So we those relationships, they solidify, and then we fast forward into adult life, and we have new troubles and new successes, and maybe one person has some personal evolution and the other person doesn't, or one person you know um still believes that they have the same level of trust with that other person, or maybe they learn something about them that sort of shakes the foundation of the relationship, or none of that happens, and one person is just not as present in the relationship as somebody else, and so it becomes one way, and it's like you know it becomes tears in a bucket, and it's like you never fill the bucket. um I can't
That's
say the
shaky
other.
foundation. Yeah, that's a shaky foundation for any relationship, trauma. Because as you said, what if one person, heals, outpaces the other person's healing? That's very risky. I think it's a lot of the people out there hustling, as they call the race hustlers. They kind of, they peddle that the trauma, the common bonds of whatever, slavery or Holocaust or whatever it is. They try to harken back to, type of Xeno, or own group pride, rallying cries. But as we see, man, usually that's attached to a lot of hustle. There's always agendas, and things, attached to that. That's why one of the things, as well, it's important to vet, um, the people that you are talking to, your therapist, again, as we go back in the episodes, people, we can go over what it takes to really be a therapist, the details and all that stuff. But there's a reason for it, because the influence, that people have in your life, especially people that you're being vulnerable with, you have to, there's a certain amount of trust that you give over, and the safeguards, the loopholes, the things, your due diligence, the caring for yourself that you have to do
Yeah.
within that, man. It all goes together for sure.
Yeah, you have to honor it. There's yeah, there's a I might have a slightly more intense relationship with the uh, with with how to look at that. It's no better or no worse than the next person, but take it into consideration that this person is allowing you into their life with the expectation that that there's trust and that there's support and that this is not going to be a relationship in which they're going to be taken advantage of.
Hmm.
And take it very seriously. There's I think a lot of people have a lot of other people in their life that, you know, on the surface they're with them, but underneath the surface, maybe they're not with them as much as they might present.
Mm.
And so there's, it's hard to know. People who have experienced, and we're talking about a lot of, veterans, experience a lot of this too. It's, you know, there's a, there's an ability to get things done that is really kind of ingrained in military service, and that you can accomplish anything, and that it's amazing what when you see people that, like, if you had seen them maybe even just a year prior or 2 years prior, would you ever imagine that that person would be capable of working on a nuclear reactor on a submarine? When they're trying to like shoot milk out their nose on purpose, in the lunchroom. And then, fast forward and they're 19 and they're working on some of the most sophisticated equipment that the world has to offer. You never really know how people's lives will evolve. And so
Hmm.
to be honoring that and to keep that in mind as I work with my clients, it's kind of exciting. I
No,
find
that's
it
awesome.
exciting.
Yeah, yeah, to see what people will become. I noticed when I tell my therapist I'm doing a new thing, he would get very excited, especially if it was like, not something he was expecting. Because I'm one of the people, if I'm going through it, man, I isolate. I'm a very loquacious individual. Like, isolate, you over here probably on YouTube right now. I know it's weird, but when I'm actually going through it, when I'm having some issues, man, people won't know. I'm not posting on social media. I'm not really reaching out. I don't reach out to people with my problems. And so, um, while I'm still going through the issues and I'm going through, I remember I told my therapist, hey, I tried Uber. Started Ubering. I started, lifting. It's like, huh? Letting strangers into your car talk. I was like, I know, right? But it actually helped me, because I have that personality type, like the number 9 personality type, where it's easier for me from the Enneagram.
Mm.
It's easier for me to work on the behalf of others. If I'm driving other people, I'm a more careful driver. I got my car cleaner. I'm more aware of my surroundings when I'm, getting myself off my own problems and my own issues. Uh, and so it's one of those things to get the encouragement from my therapist. It was almost like, okay, I didn't have to tell everybody else. I was going to tell him, and according, he could give me some context of what that really means for my progress, as opposed to other people when I tell them I started Ubering. What? What does that have to do with, like, you? It's like, actually, man, it's kind of helping my mental health a little bit,
Yeah. I mean, and how
not
is that?
isolated.
How is that when you have to explain it to people that are that are surprised to hear it?
Well, they're surprised, like, the reasoning behind it, because again, it wasn't for money, it wasn't because, anything like that. I just had bought a newer car and I'd never had a new car, and finally got the tabs paid off of it and stuff, the taxes, all that. And so I was actually eligible to do it. And somebody had said I was just giving a ride to my brother's girlfriend, and I never really drive my car much, and so because I work from home, and so she was like, "Wow, your car, do you Uber? Your car is so clean." I thought, nah, but now that you mention, I guess I could. And I end up trying to end up liking it, but I cut it out for like the super cold winter here, because no, I don't even want to be out driving. Um, and I did have a girl puke in my back seat, so I did get initiated. I was initiated.
It's what I hear.
Uh,
Like that's just one
it's
of
going to
the
happen.
rite of passage.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So where you're not, you feel like isolated, you're not peopling, whatever it is. Everything's all good till it's not. You really got to deal with people, and then again, but that grows you and stretches you to, to say, hey, you know what? At least I'm glad I gave her a ride home. Clearly, she was messed. She was in bad shape. Sister was rough. you know,
It had been
it's,
a rough night.
yeah, it been a rough night. So I'm glad she ran into me. That was cool about it, and everything was all good, man.
It's a good frame.
Yeah, exactly. So I believe all the things that we're going through, even this platform, the stuff that we're starting, it's all the things that we go through to drive us towards more empathy towards others. I think, so we can have a heart to when they're going through a situation, that we can relate to it because, again, I've made it public on this show. I don't have custody of my son currently, and if I've been a lot more judgmental of men in the past. If you say you haven't seen your son in how long? You haven't seen your da da da, or your child in how long? Well, now that I'm on the other side of it, I understand exactly how it can be, a while,
Sure.
before you because of the certain things. But that's a perspective I wouldn't have had or a heart I wouldn't have had unless I went through it myself. You
And some of
know.
those comments, they can be there's sort of there's an aggressive element to those comments, even though they're on the surface. And probably, I don't always immediately look to assign some kind of negativity to a comment like that, even though it can be received in a variety of ways. But like it's emanated in curiosity, but how it's received can be slightly, I don't know, maybe even microaggressive. It's like what? Because what does it imply? Oh, you know, am I a certain way because I haven't seen my son in a while? Like, oh, should I be judging myself? Should I have guilt for that? You start to ask yourself these questions.
Hmm. No, absolutely. And as I learned being a parent, man, everybody has an opinion on how you should be raising your child.
Everybody
That's
does.
one thing, man. Oh man, that is something that until you have a kid, you have no idea. Even, it's kind of like when you buy a car, you never notice how many of your car is out on the road until you bought it. You know, once you
Sure.
have a child, you never realize how many voices and messages and opinions on what you should be doing, how you should be raising them, how you should be to act and be around them. It's enough to drive you crazy, which is not a word we like to use here in the mental health community.
Yeah. You try to be the good enough parent. Good enough parenting tends to be good enough.
Hmm.
Presence is everything. Balancing hope and realism.
Presence is everything. Which presence is everything. It is truly that truly does matter because as we could think about as kids, man. I don't remember how much stuff cost, but I remember who was there. I remember what everybody says. I don't remember what, but I do remember, it showing up. Um, and as we learned from our other therapist guest on the show, hypnotherapist Rupert Missick, as the old GI Joe saying was, "Now we know." And knowing is half the battle. No, it's not. No, it is not. We all know what we're supposed to do. We know we're not supposed to eat that. We know we're not supposed to hang with them. We know we're supposed to do that. We know we're supposed, and we don't do it. So knowing isn't half the battle. You need that T in facts. Take
Oh
action.
yes. Take
Yes,
action.
sir.
Yeah. Yeah. It all plays into it, and you try to do as much or as little as you're able to do. It starts with forgiving yourself. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's the first part, and that can be the biggest step for people.
That's a big F right there. That F and forget, boy, that's a major thing because I think unforgiveness is a massive thing that people deal with, and because I think people don't deal with it. I think we have so many times we're so quick to get past something. Somebody did something to us, made us feel a certain way, and we say, "Man, it's all good. It doesn't matter. No, I'm good. I'm fine."
Hmm.
Some people could even ask us, "Hey, man, I heard that happened to you. Okay?" So, yeah, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. But we don't take the time. That's part of our processing. It is not dealing with it. Is reacting so quick. Is justifying. To move on. Again, it takes courage to seek it out, to really talk it out, so we can really get to even what's bothering us, because that can be embarrassing. It can be embarrassing as a grown man to say there's another grown out man out there that's bothering me.
Yeah,
you know.
happens a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
It happens a lot. Either whether on purpose or accidental. We can we're perceiving things how we're sort of wired to perceive them, and you know that can be affected by mood and the weather and all sorts of different things. It's never really know.
Uh oh, don't say weather, man, because it's funny. As a Minnesotan, I'm like, man, that's half our ways to avoid talking about stuff. Talk about the weather.
Talk about the weather. Well, I went to Minnesota, and
Okay.
you know what I noticed? I wasn't really sure what was happening at first, but because I noticed I was getting apologized to a lot.
Oh,
Um,
I'm sorry. Sorry.
yeah, I'm sorry, and I'm responding to him like, oh no, that's okay, that's fine. I'm sort of, you know, providing a corrective emotional experience to a person who actually genuinely felt that they needed to apologize to me. In my world, I'm looking at, I mean, we'll get I mean, we look at things under the microscope. A gift is not just a gift. A gift is many things, and we're looking at it. So an apology is can be many things too. And I realize people are apologizing an awful lot for things that I just in my own personal
I
judgment,
didn't
it's
even
like,
take offense to that. I
yeah,
didn't.
that didn't take offense. It's okay. And I realize, oh, okay, that's just where I'm at. Okay, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to adjust. I'll have to adjust to that, and I'm going to have to briefly get out of the habit of taking every single apology to heart. Now that doesn't mean we just eliminate them all, but when somebody is standing next to me in the elevator and I walk out and they say I'm sorry because they happen to be standing in the way for a second, I don't know. So
Yeah.
just adjust.
Instead of excuse me, we don't really say excuse me too much. That's too much. Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. I get it now. I had to ask some family, and I
Uh,
was like, hey, is there a thing? And they said, yes, there is a thing. And I said, ah, okay, excellent.
yeah.
Cultural differences. So,
Yes, cultural differences, and I think that's so important too. Is to to realize again we're so much more alike than we can be different than we are different, and learning about different cultures and the way they do things. I've found out, just like with mental health, learning about it kind of highlights things that I didn't realize about myself, things that I do when I notice in others. It's just like travel. I remember going to when I would travel, for the first time. I really remember the things that I liked about America all of a sudden, the things that you kind of take for granted. um like literally simple, something as simple as now it's a lot simpler, but cell phones. I remember going to the islands for the first time, and you had to load up cars with phone cards and buy minutes, and it was just common there. And to me, I thought that was just, have Verizon. What do y'all mean? Like, just the little things that we do take for granted, but it's through exposure that I think we can even again appreciate our own cultures. I can appreciate the I'm sorry's now when if you're around a bunch of rude people. I was gonna say New Yorkers, but I'm not gonna say that. I don't really know New York like that. It's just maybe a stereotype.
as a wise man once said, in New York, trouble can find you. So I'd rather just apologize and move on, I suppose.
There you go. Preemptive strike. All right.
That's
There we
right.
go. Preemptive strike. No, that's awesome, man. So all right, man. Hey man. So as we're, kind of wrapping this thing up, again, I do appreciate your time. This is a working man out here, right? I'm taking valuable time out from the healing of the Bay Area of California just for this. But we do appreciate it, having time here with licensed marriage and family therapist James Geri of BlueJayTherapy.com, just in case y'all missed that.
Well,
But yeah, man, as we kind of wrap up, what's kind of a theme or a theme for the year that you're kind of doing or making not a resolution, because I'm not sure if you do that, but as your practice, as you kind of go forward, as you're helping people with their mental health, what's kind of your vision for this year, some of the goals you got?
show up.
Be present, folks.
Yeah. Yeah. Just try to be there. Um, there's a lot going on. It's a lot to run a business, but it's in a field that I really like, and so I think making sure um, that I'm able to switch hats. It's one thing to handle the particulars of running the practice, and then another thing entirely to practice. And so remembering that one is not the other. I think that's the main goal, and to show up and be present. So
Awesome, awesome. And hey, as simple as that sounds, man, that's a lot to do. That's enough to do. Um,
that's the facts.
that's the facts, baby. F A T FACTS. My bad. And then what was the oil one again? Before we get out of here, you had one in the beginning that was pretty good too.
Yeah, not
Hit around that.
everybody's life is so evenly divided, but a lot of people you can kind of look at their lives and see it in thirds: occupational, interpersonal, and leisure. Um, so
Interpersonal and leisure.
yeah, you
You
got
know
got to
what?
check your oil.
Check your oil, your occupation, your personal, your leisure life, because there's a balance there, and it's hard. I mean, and that's something I don't think it just gets put out there enough. We look at people on Instagram, we look at TikTok. Everybody's putting their highlights. They're on vacation in an exotic place, making money with their family there. All of us, we're like, wait a minute, how am I like, and we think that our success is defined to be able to do all those, no, at once, but there's a balance to it, and according to how you strike that balance is going to be according to what your priorities in your life are. So I think that's a very positive message to carry into 2024. Check your oil. um, State the facts, you know and particularly, man, that's C in facts, man. Care for yourself, people. Care for yourselves, you know so again, thank you so much, James, for joining us. Hopefully we'll be able to do it again. Like I said, you're a popular man, very in demand, but we enjoy every minute that you have with us. So
Well,
thanks a lot, man.
I really enjoy talking with you too. You make it so easy. So
Appreciate it. All right, until next time, people, find balance so that you can stand, and find peace so that you can rest. Peace.